And with that being said, Mr. Asher.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, man, it's good to see everybody on. Anthony, Big Red, man, Brian, Crystal, Daniel. Oh my goodness, we have Gail. We have Gail on this call. Look at her. She's a machine. We talked about annuities, and then the next day she was like, "All right, so how do I get this app filled out?" I mean, that is gangster. Jim, Leanne, Micah, man, thank you guys for hopping on. Tom Kane. Please, if you have questions, I'm not going to be looking at the chat just because I'm on my iPad. I won't have it pulled up. I really want you to interrupt and come on. If you have a question, somebody else is probably thinking it too. But today, I had a special lineup of topics that I wanted to go over that I think will be pretty relevant. So I want to get into that. Let me share my screen. Let's see. So I'm not going to waste any time because I want to have some time for Q&A at the end, but I want to get right into it. So last time when we were going over an illustration, we looked at Silac. They're one of our favorite carriers, but we looked at a product called the Denali 14. Right. And here's really where I position these products is, and I did this last time. So if it looks familiar, um, we looked at this last time. So any investment falls somewhere on a risk reward spectrum, right? And basically, the more risk it has, the more reward it could give you. Because if I'm putting my money inside of a crypto stock that could go to zero next week, well, then I better get a good reward for it, or why else would I be in it? And so this is how I always position them: is that the market, say, the S&P is up here, right? We have the safer money, like say the bonds and CDs down here. And in the Goldilocks zone, that is where these fixed indexed annuities survive. And it's such a great place for retirees or people who are getting to that age, if in the late 40s or 50s, or certainly by the late 50s. Um, people are looking for protection at that point. And you'll see that their portfolios shift. Instead of being, 80% in stock, they might be like 50 or even less in stock because they don't want to take the risk of losing all their money right as they're getting to the finish line. And that has always been the appeal of annuities, right? Is because they're somewhere in the middle. And we looked at this illustration, and I brought it to your guys' attention last time, but when I run any of these illustrations, you'll notice I put 100% in the S&P 500 point to point with cap. Part of the reason that I do that, I'm going to scroll way down here. Part of the reason I do that is because this is a graph of all the average rates of return on an illustration. Well, what we might notice is that, remember, I did 100% inside of this first guy here. And if you'll notice, this first guy, if I can bring out a ruler here, let's see, rotate that. This first guy, if I put a ruler up to it, is literally the lowest illustrating index on the entire illustration. I literally, if you're looking, every single one of these is higher than that graph, that little line right there. So, in a very literal example, I could not illustrate a lower rate of return if I'm using an index here, right? I could not show a more conservative example of how your money might grow in this product. And could it do better? Absolutely, it could. But what I believe is that if I show you this, and then next year you get 8, 9% as your rate of return, you're going to be much happier than if I show you 13% average rate of return, and every year you get, say, 8. Right? It's just a matter of perspective, and I always want to uh, I always want to underpromise and overdeliver. Ultimately, that makes my life easier as an agent because I'm not having to sweat anniversaries, having to hide from my clients, being like, man, I really hope they don't ask about their returns this year. And trust me, we've had a number of people that have gone just with, whatever illustrates the highest, and they do have to sweat that because if it illustrates 13% average rate of return, it ain't going to do that on average. Maybe there might be 1 or 2 years out of 10 where it does, but certainly not on an average basis. So that was just a quick recap. I went over all of that last time had the pleasure of being with you guys, and I want to ask a question. So I'm going to get out of this real quick. I want to ask a question to you guys. Let me go to my cameras again. What does the market return roughly on average? And when I'm talking about the market, I really only mean the S&P. Can somebody help me out?
I'd say about 4 to 5%.
4 to 5% there. There we go. That's one guess.
I think it's 7.5-ish, maybe.
7.5-ish. Yeah. And you know what? Let's do this. Just so you guys aren't taking my word for it. I'm gonna go just straight into Google. And can you guys see this all right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. Average rates of return for the S&P 500. And the reason I'm picking the S&P 500, when people say the market is up or the market is down, they're not talking about the Euro stock or the Hang Seng or anything else. They are talking solely about the S&P 500. All it does is it takes the top 500 companies in America and it makes an index of them. And so it's basically a measure of how is America doing because it's measuring our strongest companies. Now, if you Google this, the S&P, Google will tell you the S&P has historically averaged a return of around 10% per year. Okay, with some sources citing slightly higher figures like 11, maybe 12% over the long term. Right? So they're going to tell you that the average is 11 or 12%. Let me write this down. The average, let's say 11 to 12. And on our illustration, and I'm bringing this up because this will come up. For anybody who has qualified money, almost certainly it's in the stock market. And so we just need to make sure that we understand our value and how we position ourselves in that regard. So on our illustration, someone help me out. What is our rate of return?
8%.
Our annual effective rate is
6.71.
6.71. Man, how sexy does that look after we just looked at that other one? 6.71. Now, keep in mind, once again, that is the lowest illustrated rate I could show. But what you might notice, this does not say average. What does that say? Well, it says annual effective rates. Annual effective rates. Our annual effective rate is 6.7. Now, what's interesting is that average does not equal annual effective rate. And it's very interesting. And the more I learned about it, the more I was very perplexed because when we're looking at an average on how money grows, it is very misleading because this 11 to 12% isn't really what your money feels. And I want to show you guys an example just so you understand what I'm saying. I'm going to build it like this. And you know what, Daniel, I did this with you earlier, so you totally already know the answer. But I'm going to build out just a scenario here. All right, guys. I'm Asher Molina. I'm going to be your pseudo broker for this example. Now, guys, you're going to make so much money with me, right? I'm going to make you a gazillionaire in a handful of years' time. I get an average of a ton every single year. And here's what I'm going to do for you. Right? Let's say you start with 100,000, and this is the start year 0. Here's year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Let's say the first year you're investing with me, you make a ton of money. In fact, it's a great year for you. You go up to 150,000. Somebody help me out. What interest rate did you have to get to go from 100 to 150,000? 50%. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate whoever said that. 50%. That was our rate of return that year. Now the next year we went from 150 down to 100. What was our rate of return that year?
Lost 50%.
Minus 33.
That's right. We actually lost 33. And it's a little deceptive because we lost 50 grand, but it was only 33% of the account. All right. Well, now let's say the next year, you know what, man, things just aren't looking too good right now. We went down to 50,000. How much did we lose that year?
50%.
We lost 50%. Man, who's helping me out right here? I appreciate you. Who is this?
Brian.
Ryan, I appreciate you, sir.
Sure.
And lastly, you know what? I come back on my word, though. I got you whole again. You're back at 100,000. What rate of return did I need to get there?
100%.
100%. All right. Now, to the naked eye, if you were just an investor, or you really don't know much about it, but let's just say this is just your account. If over 4 years, or 1, 2, 3, 4, if over 4 years, I come back and I say, hey, you started with 100,000, and right now you're at 100,000. What would you assume your average rate of return is?
0.
We would say our average is 0 because we started at 100, we ended at 100. Our money didn't grow. But that isn't the case. In fact, that is wrong. Because how do we calculate average? Right? We calculate average by adding up each of these numbers right here and dividing it by the number of years. And so I'm going to go ahead and start a new page. I remember these numbers, but I'm going to start a new page so remember, we had plus 50 in the first year. The next year, we lost 33%. The next year, we lost 50%. And then the next year, we gained 100%. And remember, we started at 100, ended at 100,000. So if we add all of these up, what do we get? We get 67. We get 67%. Now, remember, it took us 4 years to get there. So if I take 67% divided by 4, I might need to pull out a calculator. Can someone tell me what is 67% divided by 4?
Roughly 15.1.
15.1.
Maybe 15.2.
That's close enough. So if I'm your broker, after 4 years, remember, we started at 100, we ended at 100,000. I'm going to come back to you and tell you, hey, your average rate of return with me is 15.1%. And you're going to be like, bull crap, because I didn't make any money, right? I'm at the same place where I started 4 years ago. And I believe that is why it's so important when we're looking at how is our money performing inside of a certain account, looking at the average rate of return is just so very biased, because we know this number should be 0 and it's off by about 15%. Isn't that crazy? Is this making sense? Did I lose anybody here?
Yeah, that was really good stuff.
Well, and And it comes up because this is what I'll do is there have been a lot of times where I'm in a house with a client, I'll show them this illustration. They'll see the annual effective rate of 6.71. They'll be like, well, you know what? My average is double digits. And I'll tell them, well, your average ain't the annual effective rate, right? And so here's how we calculate annual effective rate is you can actually just do it on ChatGPT if you'd like. But here's a financial calculator. And basically, there's a handful of questions that we just need to answer, right? So if we had 4 years, right, and we started at 100,000, we didn't make any deposits, and we end at 100,000, that number right there, the I/YR, that gives us 0. And that's how we look at annual effective rate. And so here's what I want to do, because remember, once again, when we looked at what did the market average, Google told us it was about 11 to 12%. I want to see if that's the annual effective rate, because annual effective rate is just, once again, it's much less biased way to look at how money grows. So here's the S&P. I'm just going to take the last 30 years. I think that's a good range. But if I were to look, let's say 30 years ago, on 1995, that number, here we go, is 605. Okay, so I'm going to take 605. I'm going to put it in this calculator. And today, what is the market at? The S&P is at 6850. Okay, and today it's at 6850. It took us 30 years to do that. Our average, or I apologize, our annual effective rate is 8.4. So all of a sudden, the difference between the two just closes up a little bit, right? So instead of talking about double digits versus 6.7%, we're talking about 6.7 versus 8, maybe 8.5% as an annual effective rate. And so here's the question: is being protected from the market's downturns, if you're taking income, if you pass away, if whatever happens, is it worth 1%? Is it worth 1.5%, maybe even? And that's the real difference between them. Because if you're in the market, you are fully exposed to all the ups and downs. And if another 2008 happens, and remember last time, we found a period in the market's history. We started here in 2000. We found a period where you could drag your finger out for 12 years, 12 and a half years, and the market was even. And if you stop anytime before then, you would have been down, right? And so when we talk about, is taking all of that risk worth, a potential extra percent? For a lot of people in retirement, no, it's not. And that's really where a lot of our value lies, because I never want to tell them, I never will tell a client that I'm going to outperform the market, because over a long period of time, the market's going to win. But here's the thing: is when you are getting in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, you don't have a long period of time, right? The schedule of everything totally changes. So yeah, that's the first thing I wanted to go over, because I wanted to get into that last time, but I knew I would just take way too much of everybody's time if I did. So that was the first thing I wanted to get into. But also, what I wanted to get into last time is our income. Now, I talked briefly about it, but once again, our safety that we provide, being able to say, hey, you have a floor of 0, and we'll give you, market returns up to a certain percentage. That is a big part of our value. But I would say a bigger part of our value as annuity guys is our income, is the income that we give clients. Because once again, that's how anybody retires. Nobody retires off of an interest rate. They retire off of an income figure. And here's kind of the standard. And I think we went over this last time. But if I Google the 4% rule, typically how it works is they say, hey, if you pull out 4% of your retirement account, once you get to full retirement age, which right now is about, call it 67, pull out 4% of your retirement account, and hopefully that should last you about 30 years, hopefully. And if you live longer, well, then there's a chance you might run out. If the market crashes, well, there's a chance you might run out. And there's a lot of variables in that, but hopefully 4% will last you. And this isn't just one source saying that. This is an Investopedia. It's New York Life, CNBC, Bankrate. And so that really is the standard when we talk about how much money to pull out in retirement. A lot of people say the 4% rule. So I wanted to bring that up because, once again, income is one of the biggest selling points that annuities have. And I wanted to highlight just how good it could get. So this is just a product with another carrier we love, F&G. It's called the Safe Income Advantage. But let's see here. What I did is I started this illustration, 100,000. This is a 65-year-old, and I said he's taking income next year. So after 12 months, he is pulling out his first income check. And remember, we're starting with 100,000 based off the 4% rule. How much income should we have off of 100,000?
4,000.
$4,000. Inside of this product, with 1 year deferral, we are able to get 8,362. That's not just a little bit more than the 4% rule. That is literally double what the 4% rule should have been. Because remember, he should have been getting 4K a year. He's getting a little over 8K every single year. A little over 8K every year. And here's the difference too. The 4% rule says hopefully it'll last 30 years. Inside of an annuity with an income rider, this income that the client is getting continues for all years. I don't care what. You might notice on this illustration, this is the guaranteed side, so it's the worst case scenario. We're assuming we never make any interest. The market's always down. But even in this scenario, we run out of money at age 76, right? Our account is basically bone dry. And this check continues to come in, rain or shine, because you signed a contract with an insurance company. They're on the hook to pay you for the rest of your life. I don't care what. By the time you're at 95, you put in 100,000, and just in income back to yourself, you've received 242,000. By the time you're at 85, you put in 100,000, you've pulled out 158. So, can I get an amen?
A question in the chat from Alan.
Yeah.
Not a 2-year deferral. I thought those numbers were at the end of the year. So if you can clarify the.
Oh yeah. So that's in all honesty, that's part of the problem I have with how they do their illustrations. Because here's how it looked. It looks like, hey, at the start of year 2, you start getting these. But what this means is the first contract year. So this guy right here, the first contract year means from issue to month 12. And so saying that income is in year 2 means that after 12 months and 1 day, I start pulling out income, and I pull out this amount for that whole second year. So basically, from months 13 to 24. So hopefully that makes sense of it. But some illustrations, how they'll do it instead, and how I like it, is if they'll put like 65 to 66, 66 to 67, because in one contract year, you'll be 2 different ages. But yeah, does that kind of make sense?
Yes, makes sense to me. Alan, was that able to help?
Good deal. Awesome. Here, let me return back to this. Let's see. Let me check the chat line again. Isn't that a 2-year deferral? All right. Now I want to get into some other things, but before I do, does anybody have any questions as far as what we've been over already? Good deal. Good deal.
Sure. Asher, one quick question.
Yes.
So the illustration assumes 0%. Let's say, it is 6% growth. Does that just continue the death benefit longer or increase the payments more?
Man, that's a great question. So with some products, you'll see that actually does increase the payments. Every product is a little different. The one I showed you, those payments will never decrease, never increase. And so so this is based on current rates. And what you'll notice, the cap on this is much lower. Right? Of course, we still have our floor of 0, but now we have a cap of 3%. On the last illustration I showed you, the cap was like 9 point something, but now it's at 3%. And so here's part of the reason for that is every product is somewhere on the spectrum of is it more growth oriented or is it more focused on income? Because if I asked 1,000 clients, hey, do you want the best growth or the best income? They're going to say, I want the best both. And it's kind of like if you were designing a car, or if you were picking out a car and you wanted the best fuel efficiency, you'd probably pick a Prius. But if you wanted the best towing capacity, you would pick the F3500 or whatever. And so the thing is, when they're making these, they have to optimize it for one or the other. And for this product, they put all of the benefit into the income. So what you might notice is that they sacrificed the growth. So that's why you have a very small cap just because you have a very high income. But yeah, and on this side, so once again, we're getting interest, and all it really does for us is it defers out that death benefit another year. And say if I die at 77, well then in the case where I get interest, my beneficiaries will get a little something. And here's another benefit that is on most income riders that I don't usually cover with this product. But most income riders anymore have this benefit. They call it an impairment multiplier. It's basically just an income doubler. There's a lot of different names for it. But what you might notice is that this income number, if you multiply it by 2, just equals this impairment multiplier number. What they say is if you become impaired, so if you're unable to perform 2 activities of daily living, what they will do is pay you literally double the income. So it goes from 8,000 to 16,000. Once again, we started this thing off of 100, right? It's ridiculous. We can get 16,000 a year off of it. But once you run out of account value, this benefit goes away. And for this client, that's by the time they are 77. So the chances are they might be out of money before they actually need the benefit. Who knows, if they have, say, a stroke at 70, it could be really good for them to get this double payment. But almost all annuities with income riders are going to have that anymore. So it's a great benefit, mainly because if you guys have ever looked at long-term care insurance, it's ridiculous. I mean, no one gets approved. It's expensive. The premiums increase every year. It's like almost impossible to even sell it. So this is kind of the annuities way of addressing that problem without having to, build in an extra cost or anything. They're able to give this to every client. So. All right, I'm gonna get to the next thing. Do you guys remember the fact-finding questions that we use? I'll throw this in y'all's court. Here we go. You guys remember our fact-finding questions? It's maybe, if you take nothing away from what I'm saying, this might be the only thing to take away.
What do you want your money to do?
I like that, Alec. I like that. I appreciate you being the first one to speak up.
Retirement accounts.
You did. Right. Well, then straighten up.
I apologize. I think I heard two different. Daniel, what'd you say?
So do you have a plan for withdrawals from your retirement income?
My goodness, Daniel, you are the man. And also, Daniel, you got something a few weeks ago. Do you have any of the merch that was sent to you? Oh, look at that, man. That's sexy right there. Hold that up to the camera again. I Heart Index Annuities. He got a love box last time, if you remember. I Heart Index Annuities, and then there's a few other goodies in there, but yeah, exactly what Daniel said is fantastic. You know, what's your plan for pulling out income in retirement? What's your plan for pulling out income? And here's the thing, there's only a handful of fact-finding questions that I use because there's only a handful of things that people really want with their money. And once again, you know, most all annuities that we find, 95% of them come from a life sale that we're doing, or they come from a Medicare sale that we were doing. And at the end of the sale, we asked a fact-finding question or two. And then we followed it up. And literally it takes 5 minutes to schedule that next appointment. But if you can do that, you can be selling annuities for literally no lead cost. Because remember, you're already seeing this client for another form of insurance. That's the most effective way we've seen people do this. And literally what we've seen is if an agent gets an extra 6 annuity sales in a year, if you could literally get one sale every other month, you might end up doubling your income just because that's all it takes. So here's what I want to go over is the questions of what Daniel said first and foremost. You know, is what is your plan for pulling out income in retirement? Because I'll tell you, I asked this question, and a lot of people, 99% of the time, the answer that I get is, well, I'm going to pull out Social Security and, you know, pull out a little bit extra from my 401k every year and just make ends meet that way. And a follow-up question that I have for them that I want to ask gently because nobody has a good answer for it, but it's, well, what's your plan if your 401k runs out? What if, basically, AKA, what if you live too long? Right? What if life gets too expensive? And here's the hard thing is part of it is just making people understand the reality of the situation, because once again, if you run out of your 401k and you're solely reliant on Social Security, what does life look like for you?
Maybe
I know we did.
maybe we're not taking as many vacations.
You,
It looks like
man,
government house.
sure, you're sure as crap not taking no vacations. Here, Social Security average check. Let's say 2025. I think we looked at this last time. Social Security on average right now, oh, come on now, pays around, let's call it 2,000. It's around 2,000 a month. All right. Who here could live off of 2,000 a month?
Me.
Yeah, certainly not me. And once again, Social Security only even aims to replace about 40% of your working income. And I don't know damn near anybody that could live off of 40% of what they're making now. Not even in El Paso. Yeah. And so that's the question, because, and that's the reality that a lot of retirees face, is they're reliant on Social Security because they built up this 401k, they got 100,000 in it, they think they're rich. And the truth is it evaporates much quicker than you might think.
Yeah.
And so that's, once again, that's the question. What's your plan for income in retirement? And if, you know, when they say the answer that everyone gives, do you have a plan if your 401k runs out? Or if do you have a plan if you end up living too long? Well, you know what, Mr. Gutierrez, it's a really good thing that we met, because one of the things I specialize in is protecting retirement accounts and leveraging them to create an income for you that you could never outlive. Is that something that we could take a look at here in a couple days or here next week?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, of course. So I asked my fact finding what's your plan for income? And then of course they say that they don't have one. Hey, well, I'll tell you what, it's a really good thing that we met. One of the things that I specialize in is protecting retirement accounts and turning them into an income that you could never outlive. Is that something you might be interested in taking a look at? And I'll tell you guys, don't get discouraged. Some people, no matter what, you could show them free gold bars from your pockets, and they would not talk about their retirement account no matter what. But you ask that question to the clients that you're already serving, and most of the time, they're going to say, "All right, yeah, let's show me what you got. I'll take a look at it. Let's just see what it is." And when you see those people, and I mentioned this last time, but it's just such a good visual. When you see those people, the greeters at Walmart that are 85 years old and way too old to be, out working a minimum wage job, the reality of the situation is maybe they never had 401k savings to begin with, or maybe they used them all too quickly because they thought it was going to last, or they didn't even have a plan. And so that's the reality that we're trying to save people from. And two, I mentioned that, hey, if you do run out of income, or if you do run out of this retirement account, is your plan to, go to your mom and dad for help? Well, no, they're probably dead or dying, right? Is it to go to your kids for help? Well, no, they're saving for their own retirement. If you run out of money in retirement, there is no one else to look to. And it's not to say that kids don't help out, but you don't want to be that 70-year-old that's living in your kid's house while they're trying to raise their kids because you didn't plan right. And that's an unfortunate reality for a lot of people, is their lack of planning kind of just invades on their kids, or just their family's lives, because they can't live off of $2,000 a month, right? Nobody can. It's not their fault. But once again, that's what we are saving people from. And I'm going to add a few more into this, because what I've noticed is that the more questions you can ask before you set that second appointment, the easier it's going to be for you when you show them the product, right? Because, for example, I'm going to go over a handful of questions. So the first one I said was, hey, what's your plan for income in retirement? Write down, okay. Don't have one. Hey, how do you feel about the market's volatility right now? You ask any old dude that, it's man, I'm not comfortable. And I'll tell you, it's not even an old or young person thing. You ask anybody that, man, no one's comfortable with the market right now. How do you feel about the market's volatility right now? Does that make you comfortable? Okay. Now, what about, do you have a history of longevity in your family? And I'll go through these list of questions, and when I come back to them with an illustration or with a product, what I'm able to do at that point is, hey, Mr. Gutierrez, what you mentioned to me, what you told me is that you were not comfortable with the current volatility in the market. So the first thing I wanted to do was find a solution that eliminated that risk. You also mentioned to me that you didn't really have a plan for taking income out in retirement. So what I also wanted to do is make sure that this solution would pay you an income even if you run out of money. And when you're coming back to them, it's completely tailor fit to everything that they just told you. But once again, almost everybody has the same answers to it. They're not comfortable with market risk. They don't have a plan for pulling out income. And they need one, because for most all people, there are a handful of exceptions that have pensions. But for most all people, they don't have pensions in retirement. Literally, it's just they have Social Security, they have their 401k, or they have their 403b, and that's it. And there's nothing else that they have to rely on. and what else? And I was looking at an example with Mr. Tom Kane too, where it was a very interesting deal. It provided income not just for the husband's life, but for the wife's life as well. It was awesome where even if, say, the husband died at age 80 and the wife lived another 20 years, it would continue to pay her an income, even if the account ran out of value. And so don't get it twisted. If there's a case that is weird or unique, we probably got a product for it. So, yeah, then that might be another one to add too. Hey, do you have a history of longevity? Well, I don't. Well, does your wife have a history of longevity? In her family. So,
Asher, would that be a joint survivorship annuity, or how would that be listed?
yeah, it's just called joint income, and all annuities will offer it. And really, what they do is they just reduce the income a little bit to get that. But take that example of, let's say, the Safe Income Advantage we looked at earlier, right? It was paying a little over 8% as its payout rate, guaranteed to last. If we did joint, it might go down to 7% or maybe even 6.5%. But is that still better than taking 4% out if we're following the 4% rule? Absolutely. And especially because, once again, it's guaranteed to last for both spouses' lives. And I'll cue you guys in. If I'm talking to the wife, women just end up living longer. So if I'm running it on the wife, I really just want to do it on her life, because most of the time, he'll be dead before her anyways. But it's a good point and that's just the reality. Gil's laughing. That's just the reality. That's just life. But I know I'm not long for this world.
That's why I married younger.
But yeah, so that is in most cases a good point to bring up with the husband, because if they're the same age, or shoot, if the husband is older, that's definitely a worry on his mind. He wants to make sure that the wife is going to have enough income when he dies. So, do those fact-finding questions, those make sense to everybody?
Yeah. And Asher, I did have a quick question. Maybe you can just kind of expand on it. Because I
Yeah.
know for like my parents, they were doing the rollover to the SILAC annuity, and their biggest concern is that income check every single year.
Right.
Do you have anything, like any sort of information on that in terms of, I don't know, processing times, or
How fast that takes to get
what that looks like? I feel like that's another very like common question when it comes to like annuities. It's like, because you're locking it in for X amount of time. It's like, well, I'm locking it in. How easy is it for me to get access to that money?
I see what you're saying. And
that
from their account, or they want to start taking income, typically I want to start that process like 3 weeks before. And the reason I do that is because it takes a form that we have to fill out. If anything is wrong on that form, we have to redo it. And then they have to, cut the check or get ready to electronically transfer the funds, which you think would be instant. It takes a handful of days. But that's why I always try to do it, way in advance, just so they're not stuck waiting saying, man, this company really takes forever to give me my money. So that's something that you as the agent can kind of help to eliminate, is just by getting ahead of it. But most all companies aren't sending physical checks. They'll just do an EFT straight into their bank account, because it's just easier for everybody. What was I going to go over? No, and really, what I want to challenge you guys to do is I want you to get with each other, or get in front of a mirror, get in front of your significant other, and practice those questions, because I promise you start asking those, and you are just going to be drowning in annuity leads. And once again, if you can get one every other month, that is fantastic. You can get one every 2 months. So if you start asking that question at every appointment that you're at, even if you only close 10% of them, 5% of them, how many could that mean for you? Right. And so once again, practice those questions, because all it takes is just an extra 5 minutes at the end of the appointment. After you've already met with them, you've already built a rapport. Hey, you know what? I wouldn't be doing my full due diligence if I didn't ask, what's your plan for income? Or they might mention that they worked as a mail carrier. Well, hey, if you worked as a mail carrier, did you have a retirement account with them? Okay, is it still with them right now? Awesome. Well, hey, one of the things I do is yada yada yada. And what I always leave it with is, because I never want to overwhelm them or try to go into an annuity right then and there, because totally brain fog, confuse them at that point. But I'll just say, hey, here's what I'll do. Let me get with my team of specialists, and I'm going to see if we can't build a solution that would fit your needs. All right, can I get back with you here in, say, 4 or 5 days? Let's schedule something up. And that's all it looks like, because for you guys at that point, even if you're not feeling confident with annuities, all you have to do is ask that question, get that appointment scheduled, and then you leave the house and you call me. You go, Asher, I have no clue I found 80 grand in this 401k. The lady wants to retire in 3 years. Help me out. And I promise you, I'll walk you through the whole thing. I'll hold your hand through it. When it comes time to moving the money, I'll help you move the money. You just got to have a little bit of faith in me. But if you can ask that question, I promise that is the hardest part of the whole thing. So I think that's about. I certainly don't want to take too much time here. Are there any last? Okay, yeah.
So can we get a list of your fact-finding questions?
What was that?
Can we get a list of your fact-finding questions?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Is there somebody I could just send these questions to, and they could
Jane?
Hey, Asher, I took a screenshot of it when we met previously, so I can go ahead and post that. And well, actually, sorry, some of them are cut off. Never mind.
Some of them are cut off. Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, so I'll tell you what. Let me send Daniel. I'm going to send you just a screenshot of those questions. If you can post it in group chat or whatever it is.
Yeah, I can post it.
But once again, practice those questions. It doesn't take long, but just get them down to the point where it's very natural for you to bring those up. You're not having to look like you're remembering a script. Teresa Jane. Oh, I see. But just make sure that, once again, if you can become an expert in just setting that next appointment, we'll get you the rest of the way through. So was there any other questions before I end it today? Awesome. Well, guys, thank you very much. Once again, I'm very blessed that you guys would have me on, and everyone is letting me waste their time this morning. So once again, thank you very much. You guys got my number. If you don't have it, reach out to someone who does. Please reach out to me anytime. I'm 24/7. You guys are awesome, and thank you once again.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, Asher. You could go ahead and give me your number. Go ahead.